If you've ever felt like a woman slowly stopped respecting you and you couldn't explain when it started, this video is about you. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Women don't accidentally walk all over men. They only do it when a man never set boundaries early enough to stop it. In the first stages of dating, there are 5 boundaries that determine whether she sees you as a man she respects or a man she slowly takes for granted. Miss even one, and you'll spend months confused, overgiving, and wondering why the dynamic flipped. This isn't about being harsh. It's not about playing games. And it's definitely not about controlling women. It's about understanding the exact moments where men unknowingly give away leverage and how to stop doing that before attraction turns into tolerance. If you don't learn these 5 boundaries early, you won't just lose her respect. You'll lose yourself trying to get it back. Most dating advice teaches men how to react. This video teaches you how to position yourself so you don't have to react at all. The difference isn't confidence or charisma, it's structure. Boundaries create structure, and structure determines who leads the dynamic and who adapts to it. If you're ready to shift from guessing to understanding, like the video and subscribe now. Because once you see how these dynamics actually form, you stop chasing outcomes and start controlling your own position. And that shift begins with the very first boundary most men ignore. Let's break that open. Number 1. Never open financial access before she's earned it. Men confuse sharing with bonding. You think talking about money is just conversation. You think you're being transparent, relaxed, authentic. But that's not how it lands on the other side of the table. To a woman, early financial information is not intimacy. It's data. The moment you talk about your income, your investments, the cost of your car, the trips you're planning, something subtle but irreversible happens. You stop being a man she's discovering, and you start being a man she's measuring. Not emotionally, practically. This is what I call the provider audition. She hasn't chosen you yet. She hasn't committed. She hasn't invested. But you're already standing on stage, proving your usefulness. And the dangerous part is that you usually don't even notice it happening. You mention your salary casually. You joke about a bonus. You talk about how much you've saved this year. You think you're just making conversation. But in her mind, a quiet assessment begins. Stability, capacity, access. From that point on, attraction stops being emotional and starts becoming evaluative. Here's the truth most men don't want to hear. Once a woman starts evaluating your wallet, she stops feeling you. Curiosity turns into calculation. Tension turns into expectation. And no, she doesn't need to ask you for money for this shift to happen. All she has to do is observe how freely you expose it, how eager you are to signal that you can provide, how quickly you turn your financial life into proof of worth. Men do this because they were taught that providing equals value, that security equals desirability. But early on, provision doesn't create attraction. It replaces it. You're no longer the man she wants. You're the man she's seeing what she can get from. That's why this boundary matters so early. Because once the frame changes, you don't get it back. You can't talk your way out of being evaluated. You can't charm your way back into mystery. The moment she starts evaluating your wallet, attraction stops being emotional. It becomes transactional. When you step in too early and start solving her financial problems, something critical shifts, and it's not in your favor. You don't become her partner. You become her support system. That's the role downgrade most men never see coming. The moment you say, "I got you," before there's commitment, you silently volunteer for responsibility without authority. You give provision without position. And once that happens, the dynamic hardens. She may appreciate you, but appreciation is not desire. Gratitude is not attraction. This is where the financial tests begin. They're subtle. She mentions how tight things have been lately. A bill she's stressed about. A car issue that's expensive to fix. She's not asking outright. She's watching. She's watching how quickly you move. She's watching if you feel compelled to rescue. She's watching whether your boundaries collapse the moment pressure appears. Most men fail here because they confuse generosity with leadership. They rush in, thinking it proves value. In reality, it proves predictability. And predictable men are easy to place into utility roles. The correct boundary doesn't require speeches or defensiveness. You don't justify. You don't over-explain. You don't apologize. You stay calm. You stay grounded. You close the door without slamming it. Something simple, supportive, but firm. No offer, no guilt, no entanglement. And here's the part that surprises men. A woman who is genuinely interested will respect this immediately. Not because she's testing you less, but because she feels safer with a man who protects his structure. A woman with unclear intentions will feel irritated. She may pull back. She may lose interest. That's not a loss. That's filtration. This boundary doesn't push women away. It filters out the ones who were never there for you, only for what you could provide. Leadership begins where access is controlled. Number 2, never tolerate disrespect, especially when it's subtle. Most men think disrespect looks loud. Raised voices, insults, obvious hostility. That's why they miss it when it actually matters. Because real disrespect doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in quietly and waits to see if you'll stop it. It shows up when she interrupts you mid-sentence and keeps talking. When she makes a passive joke at your expense and follows it with, "Relax, I'm just teasing." When she casually compares you to her ex. When she ignores your messages for hours but expects instant replies from you. None of these moments feel big enough to confront. And that's exactly why they work. From a psychological standpoint, this isn't cruelty, it's evaluation. She's asking one silent question. Can I get away with this? Women test boundaries the same way water tests cracks. Slowly, incrementally. One small push at a time. If nothing pushes back, the pressure increases. Here's a scenario most men recognize but rarely address. You're out with her and a few friends. Everyone's laughing, talking. Then someone asks how things are going between you two. She smirks and says something like, "He's fine," when he's not being clueless. Her friends laugh. She laughs too. You smile. You tell yourself it's harmless, that she didn't mean it like that. But something just happened. She lowered your status in public. She used you as a moment of entertainment. And more importantly, she watched what you did next. Disrespect tests aren't about the comment. They're about your response, or lack of one. When you let it slide, you're not being easygoing. You're signaling that your self-respect is negotiable. That comfort matters more to you than boundaries. And once a woman realizes she can step over you without consequence, she will. Not because she's malicious, but because you showed her the line doesn't exist. Silence is not composure. Silence is consent. That's the mistake men make when they convince themselves that staying quiet makes them look calm, mature, unbothered. In reality, what you're communicating is much simpler and much more damaging. You're telling her that this behavior is allowed. When you don't respond to subtle disrespect, you don't freeze the moment. You set a precedent, and precedents compound. One small pass turns into another, then another, until the dynamic has shifted so far that fixing it feels impossible. Here's the chain reaction most men never anticipate. When she disrespects you publicly and you let it slide, her friends notice. They don't see you as easygoing. They see you as the man who doesn't stand up for himself. Their perception changes first. Then hers follows. Because once a woman sees that you'll tolerate being diminished in front of others, she learns she can do it privately too. The tone shifts. The effort drops. The attraction erodes. Not overnight, but permanently. High-value men don't respond to disrespect with explosions or sarcasm. They don't embarrass her back. They don't turn it into drama. They respond immediately, calmly, directly. One short sentence, no edge, no explanation, no emotional charge, just a clear line drawn in the sand. That response does something powerful. It resets the frame. It tells her, and everyone watching, that you respect yourself enough to stop the moment it crosses a line. This isn't about controlling her behavior. It's about enforcing your standards. Because respect is not negotiated through patience. It's not earned by endurance. And it's not preserved by silence. Respect is enforced. Number 3, never make your time freely available just because you like her. This is where most men sabotage themselves before the relationship even has a chance to form. You think availability shows interest. You think saying yes quickly proves enthusiasm. You think rearranging your schedule makes you look invested. From her side, it looks very different. When a man is always available, it doesn't signal desire. It signals a lack of structure. And women don't evaluate men in isolation. They evaluate the life that surrounds him. Here's the pattern. You meet a woman you're excited about. The chemistry feels good. The attention feels promising. And because you don't want to miss your opportunity, you start doing something subtle but destructive. You cancel plans. You move commitments. You stay flexible, just in case, she texts. Dinner with friends disappears. Gym sessions get skipped. Your schedule becomes reactive instead of intentional. Not because you're irresponsible, but because you're afraid of losing momentum. That fear is what she feels. From a psychological perspective, a woman isn't just asking, "Does he like me?" She's asking, "Does this man have a life that can hold me without collapsing?" When your time becomes an open buffet, she doesn't feel chosen. She feels prioritized at the expense of everything else. And paradoxically, that lowers attraction. Men believe scarcity pushes women away. In reality, the absence of structure pushes them away faster. A man who drops everything the moment she appears doesn't look committed. He looks unanchored. And women don't trust men who have nothing anchoring them. This boundary isn't about playing hard to get. It's about protecting the foundation of your life, because when your time loses value, you do too. A man who treats his time like currency is always in demand. Not because he's unavailable, not because he's playing games, but because his life already has direction before she ever steps into it. When you protect your schedule, something powerful happens in her mind. She stops seeing you as an option she can summon and starts seeing you as a man she has to meet halfway. Time creates anticipation when it's not on demand. That's the part most men misunderstand. They think saying no kills momentum. In reality, it sharpens it. When you don't jump every time she reaches out, you signal self-control. And self-control is one of the strongest indicators of maturity. Here's what this looks like in real life. She texts late. She wants to see you spontaneously. But you have an early morning, a workout, a commitment you already made. The low-value move is to abandon your plans and rush over, hoping it proves interest. The grounded move is simple. Calm. No explanation spiral. You acknowledge her, but you don't rearrange your life to accommodate an impulse. That response does two things at once. It shows that your time matters. And it makes the time you do give her feel intentional, not convenient. There's an important distinction here. Being busy isn't attractive. Purpose is. A man with purpose doesn't need to fake scarcity. His schedule reflects priorities. His life has momentum, and women feel that difference immediately. When your time is protected, attraction has space to grow. When your time is unlimited, attraction suffocates. You don't win by being constantly present. You win by being consistently grounded. Number 4, never become her emotional dumping ground before she commits. This is one of the most seductive traps men fall into because it disguises itself as connection. She opens up early, talks about her ex, the trauma, the chaos, family drama, how every man before you hurt her. She cries on the phone, tells you she's never felt this understood, and you think, this must mean something. It feels intimate. It feels special. It feels like you're different. But emotional dumping is not intimacy. It's recruitment. What's actually happening is simple. She's testing how much emotional labor you're willing to carry before she gives you anything real in return. And most men volunteer without realizing the cost. You listen for hours. You reassure. You stay up late calming her down. You give advice. You absorb her emotional weight. You become steady, reliable, safe. And slowly, quietly, the frame shifts. You're no longer the man she desires. You're the man she stabilizes herself with. Here's the part that hurts the most. Men mistake emotional access for emotional bonding. They think, she trusts me. What they don't see is that trust without investment doesn't create attraction. It creates utility. She leans on you, then turns around and gives her excitement, her curiosity, her unpredictability to someone else. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stepped into the role of therapist instead of partner. Masculine polarity dies the moment you become her emotional container too early. Mystery fades, tension dissolves, desire flattens, and you can't argue your way out of that position. Once you're emotionally categorized as the safe one, it sticks. This boundary isn't about being cold, it's about pacing intimacy. Because when you carry her emotional weight before she chooses you, you're giving away your strongest leverage. Emotional closeness is powerful, but only when it's mutual, only when it's earned. Emotional intimacy is currency, and like any currency, it loses value when it's handed out without investment. Here's the distinction most men never learn. You can be present without being responsible. You can listen without carrying. You can care without collapsing into her emotional world. The mistake isn't empathy. The mistake is overextension. When you rush to absorb her pain, fix her wounds, and stabilize her emotions before there's commitment, you reverse the natural flow of bonding. She doesn't grow closer to the man who carries her. She grows closer to the man she invests in. That's how emotional attachment actually forms. Healthy emotional pacing looks different. You listen, you acknowledge, you stay grounded. But you don't dive into problem-solving mode. You don't become the late-night crisis line. You don't let her emotional storms dictate your availability or identity. This boundary protects masculine polarity. Polarity exists when there's tension, space, and mutual effort. It dies when one person becomes the emotional anchor while the other drifts freely. Men often think pulling back emotionally makes them seem uncaring. In reality, it makes the connection cleaner. It invites reciprocity. It gives her the opportunity to step forward emotionally instead of leaning back into you. And that's the key shift. A woman bonds with the man she invests in emotionally, not the one who carries her emotional weight for free. When she has to show up, when she has to contribute, when she has to regulate herself, attraction deepens naturally. This boundary doesn't block intimacy. It preserves it. Because intimacy that isn't earned doesn't build desire. It builds dependence. And dependence is the opposite of attraction. Number 5. Never panic when she pulls back. This is the moment where most men undo everything they did right before. Things were good. The energy was there. The connection felt mutual. Then something shifts. Her replies slow down. The warmth fades. The effort drops. And instead of staying grounded, you panic. That panic is instinctive. You feel the distance and assume something is wrong. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe there's someone else. And without realizing it, you start doing the one thing guaranteed to kill attraction. You try harder while she does less. It usually unfolds in 3 predictable mistakes. First, you fill the silence. She creates space, and you rush to close it. More messages, faster replies, extra check-ins. What you're really saying is, I'm uncomfortable without your attention. Second, you try to reassure her. You offer emotional availability on demand. You let her know you're there for anything. Every word quietly communicates fear. Fear of losing her, fear of the connection slipping away. Third, you overcompensate. You plan more, compliment more, give more. You turn the volume up, hoping effort will restore what distance removed. But attraction doesn't work that way. From a power dynamic perspective, the moment you increase effort in response to withdrawal, the balance shifts. She holds the frame, you chase it. And once that imbalance locks in, desire suffocates. A woman cannot miss a man who is constantly trying to close the gap. She can only miss what has space to disappear. Pulling back is not always a test. Sometimes it's clarity forming. Sometimes it's interest fading. And sometimes it's simply life. But panic turns every possibility into the same outcome. Loss of leverage, loss of attraction, loss of self-respect. Attraction never returns because you try harder. It returns when there's absence. That's the paradox most men resist, because it feels counterintuitive. You were taught that effort fixes problems, that persistence proves value, that if you just show up more, love will stabilize. But romantic attraction doesn't respond to effort. It responds to space. When you stop rewarding distance with increased attention, one of two things happens, and both outcomes work in your favor. If she's genuinely interested, she recalibrates. She notices the absence. The imbalance corrects itself. Her effort rises to meet yours. Consistency returns, not because you chased it, but because you gave it room to surface. If she doesn't come back, then the truth was already there. Your boundary didn't cause the loss. It revealed it faster. This is where men get stuck emotionally. They think, if I pull back, I'll lose her. What they don't see is that they were already losing themselves trying to keep her close. Never reward distance with effort. Effort given in response to withdrawal trains imbalance. It teaches her that she can reduce investment while you increase it. And once that lesson is learned, attraction doesn't recover. Absence does something effort never can. It restores polarity. It returns control to your side of the equation. It reminds her that access to you is not guaranteed. And if she chooses not to step forward when space is created, then you didn't lose a woman who wanted you. You stopped chasing an illusion that required you to abandon your grounding. That's the quiet power of this boundary. It doesn't manipulate outcomes, it clarifies them. You didn't lose her. You stopped chasing what was never fully yours. What you've just learned isn't a collection of dating tips. It's a system. 5 boundaries, 1 framework, 1 purpose, protecting your value before someone else decides what it's worth. These boundaries are not about controlling women. They're not about manipulation. And they're definitely not about turning cold or disconnected. They exist for one reason only: to keep you from losing yourself while trying to keep someone else. When you control financial access, you protect leverage. When you shut down disrespect early, you protect dignity. When you guard your time, you protect direction. When you pace emotional intimacy, you protect polarity. When you stop chasing withdrawal, you protect self-respect. Together, they form a filter. Women who are drawn to structure, strength, and self-control will feel safer with you. Women who were only comfortable when you were overgiving, over-available, and over-invested will quietly disappear. That's not loneliness, that's clarity. Boundaries don't make you harder to love. They make it possible for the right person to love you without you shrinking to earn it. They ensure that when a woman chooses you, she's choosing the man you actually are, not the version that sacrifices himself to be tolerated. And if there's one truth I want you to walk away with, it's this: you don't gain power by demanding more from women. You gain power by requiring more from yourself. If this resonated, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe. Stay here. This channel exists for men who are done being confused, drained, and second-guessing their worth. Like the video. Share it with the man who keeps giving too much and getting less. And leave a comment. Tell me which boundary hit you the hardest. This channel isn't here to comfort you. The answer isn't chance. It's knowledge. And the knowledge I'm about to give you will change everything. Once you know it, she can't dangle love like a prize. She can't manipulate your emotions. She can't keep you trapped, because you'll see through it all. Stay with me, because I'm going to reveal 5 truths that will end the games forever and put you back in control of your life. I don't want you to just watch this video passively. I want you to claim it as a turning point. So take a second right now, hit subscribe, press like, and in the comments write these words: I refuse to be blind anymore. That's your declaration. That's your start. And once you've done it, stay with me. Because the very first truth will open your eyes to why love, as you thought it was, may never have been unconditional. Number 1. The difference between conditional and genuine love. Most men walk into relationships with blind faith. They carry this deep belief that when a woman says, I love you, it means she loves all of you. Your flaws, your struggles, your weaknesses, and your failures. They imagine her love as an eternal flame, steady and unconditional. But here's the harsh truth. Most of what you experience in modern relationships is not unconditional. It is conditional. It is love that lives under terms and boundaries, whether spoken or unspoken. Think about it. How does her tone change when the money slows down? How does her attitude shift when the attention you give her fades, or when the excitement of the early days wears off? Suddenly, the warmth feels colder. Suddenly, the affection feels heavier, tied to invisible strings you never noticed before. That is conditional love in action. This doesn't mean women are heartless. It means they are wired to respond to security, stability, and provision. Their affection often mirrors the circumstances around them. When life feels safe, when you are consistent, when you are giving, her love shines brighter. But when those factors vanish, her behavior shifts. The danger for men lies in not recognizing this pattern early. Here's the mistake so many men make. They give endlessly. They pour energy, time, money, and loyalty into the relationship, expecting the same devotion in return. They believe sacrifice guarantees reciprocity. But reality doesn't work like that. Men keep giving until they are drained, until they have nothing left, and then they look around confused, asking, why wasn't my loyalty enough? The problem isn't that conditions exist. The problem is that men refuse to acknowledge them. Men cling to the fantasy that love will always mirror their effort. And that fantasy breaks them. Because when she pulls away, when her affection starts to feel transactional, they interpret it as betrayal instead of reality. Now here's where the shift happens. Once you recognize the truth, it doesn't make you bitter. It makes you wise. Instead of giving blindly, you start observing. You stop being seduced by sweet words and begin to measure actions. You stop judging her love by how she treats you when you are at your best, and start evaluating how she behaves when you are at your lowest. This is where clarity begins. You realize that much of what you thought was unconditional devotion was often admiration for your consistency, gratitude for your efforts, or security in what you provide. Not genuine attachment to you as a man. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So how does this knowledge empower you? It forces you to stop over-investing. It reminds you that love is not a blank check you write until your account is empty. It teaches you to set boundaries, to observe before you give, to require reciprocity instead of assuming it. Conditional love doesn't mean you are doomed. It means you must stop living blind. If she only loves you at your peak but disappears when you fall, you now have your answer. If her affection fluctuates with your wallet, your status, or your energy, then you understand exactly what her love is built on. And when you understand, you stop being a servant to it. The man who learns this lesson stops pouring himself out without measure. He protects his resources, his time, his energy, his devotion. He chooses carefully who earns it. He doesn't shut his heart, but he guards it. and that single shift changes the entire balance. Because once you know this truth, you are no longer desperate for her approval. You are no longer blind to the conditions that drive her love. You become deliberate, cautious, and powerful. And when a man reaches that point, the game changes forever. Number 2, the power of your attention. Most men underestimate it. They treat their attention like it's worthless, giving it away to anyone who asks, like free samples in a grocery store. But attention is not free. It's one of the most valuable currencies you possess. Every glance, every text, every compliment, every late-night conversation is energy. And energy is influence. Influence is power. Here's the trap. When you like a woman, you drown her in attention. You text constantly. You comment on her pictures. You praise every detail she shows you. At first, it feels harmless, even sweet. You think you're showing interest. But what you don't realize is that abundance kills value. Anything that flows too freely is taken for granted. Women understand this instinctively. They know how attention fuels their confidence. They know the high of being desired, admired, validated day after day. For many, it's not even about love. It's about the thrill of being wanted. The more you give, the more they consume. But it doesn't always bring them closer to you. In fact, the opposite happens. You've probably seen it. The man who's always available, always calling, always chasing, becomes invisible. His presence is so constant that it loses its impact. She doesn't wonder about him. She doesn't miss him. Why? Because he's already there, every second, waiting on demand. The chase is over before it begins, and she feels no need to invest. But watch what happens when a man pulls back. Suddenly, silence becomes louder than words. Suddenly, absence speaks volumes. When the flood of validation dries up, curiosity creeps in. She begins to notice the gap. She starts to wonder, where is he? Why isn't he texting? Who has his attention now? And that shift creates desire, even fear. This is the truth. The more selective you are with your attention, the more powerful it becomes. When you stop giving it away recklessly, it transforms into something rare. And rarity creates value. Your glance becomes meaningful. Your compliments carry weight. Your time feels like a gift, not a guarantee. Here's where most men get it wrong. They think pulling back means playing cruel games. It's not about cruelty. It's about respect. Respect for your own energy. When you realize your attention is sacred, you stop wasting it on women who don't reciprocate. You stop chasing validation from someone who only enjoys the spotlight but refuses to give anything back. This is when the balance flips. Instead of being the man who begs for recognition, you become the man she works to impress. Instead of competing for her validation, you recognize that your validation is the prize. And the more you invest in yourself, your goals, your growth, your body, your money, the rarer and more valuable your attention becomes. Think about it. A man who pours all his energy into chasing ends up drained and ignored. But a man who channels that energy into his own life becomes magnetic. He doesn't have to run after women. Women chase him because his attention feels earned, not automatic. So the lesson is clear. Protect your attention like treasure. Give it wisely, not freely. Watch how people respond when they realize it's no longer guaranteed. The same women who once took you for granted will begin to shift. They'll lean in. They'll fight for what you no longer hand out easily. And here's the final point. When you understand the power of your attention, you stop living as a chaser. You transform into a chooser. And in that moment, the game with women changes completely. Number 3. Emotional control. For generations, men have been trained to prove love through reaction. She ignores you? Chase her harder. She withdraws? Pour in more effort? She lashes out? Show your passion by raising your voice. And if she threatens to leave, you beg. thinking desperation equals devotion. This cycle has trapped countless men in emotional slavery, making them prisoners of their own feelings. Here's what you need to see clearly. The strongest weapon many women use in relationships is not beauty, not charm. It's their ability to move your emotions at will. They test your anger. They test your jealousy. They test your insecurity. And every time you explode, panic, or plead, you hand them proof that they control you. If she knows a silent treatment drives you crazy, she can use it. If she knows your jealousy makes you reckless, she can trigger it. If she knows your fear of abandonment makes you beg, she can manipulate it. Your reactions become her leverage, and the more predictable you are, the easier you are to manipulate. But something changes the moment you learn control. When her silence no longer shakes you, when her mood swings no longer send you into panic, when her threats no longer break your composure, suddenly the games stop working. Your calmness unsettles her. Your steadiness confuses her. Your refusal to crumble under pressure forces her to meet you on level ground. Understand this. A man who cannot control his emotions is a puppet. A man who can control them becomes untouchable. Emotional control doesn't mean shutting off your feelings. It means refusing to let them dictate your actions. It means knowing that anger, when uncontrolled, is weakness. That jealousy, when loud, is insecurity. That begging, dressed up as loyalty, is really desperation. Picture this. She storms out, expecting you to follow. You stay calm. She gives you the silent treatment, expecting an apology frenzy. You carry on, steady and composed. She hints at leaving, expecting panic. You respond with quiet strength, ready to walk away if respect is gone. That is emotional control in action. And do you know what happens then? Respect. Because strength in a man is not measured by how loud he yells or how frantically he reacts. It's measured by how grounded he remains when tested. Women are drawn to mystery, to steadiness, to a man who cannot be pushed and pulled like a toy. Emotional control turns you into that man. Here's the deeper shift. Emotional control also changes how you see yourself. You stop feeling ashamed for having emotions, but you no longer let them rule you. You understand that silence can carry more weight than 1,000 words. You learn that walking away is sometimes the loudest statement you can make, and in that stillness, you find power. The truth is, when you gain control, you break one of the oldest patterns of manipulation. Tears no longer sway you. Anger no longer intimidates you. Withdrawal no longer enslaves you. She realizes she must engage you with respect, not games. She must show genuine character, not temporary theatrics. And here's the most important point. When you control yourself, you control the relationship. Not by domination, not by manipulation, but by refusing to be moved like a pawn on her board. You set the rhythm. You set the tone. She either rises to your level or she walks away. Either way, you keep your dignity intact. This is why emotional control is the third truth every man must master. Without it, you will always be reactive, always dancing to her moods. With it, you set the rhythm, and the game changes forever. Number 4, the reality of options. From a young age, men are taught a dangerous lie, that women are the prize and a man must chase, prove, and perform just to keep her attention. This belief creates desperation. It convinces men that if they lose one woman, they'll never find another. And so they cling, they tolerate disrespect, they lower their standards, they beg for crumbs, all because they believe she is the only option they'll ever have. But here's the truth. Men have options too. The difference is that a woman's options are given, while a man's options are built. A young woman can walk into a room and attract attention without saying a word. But for a man, options don't fall into his lap. They are forged in the gym when he chooses discipline over laziness. They are built in his career when he invests years of effort into becoming financially independent. They are sharpened in his character when he learns confidence, social skills, and purpose. A man who refuses to build remains trapped in scarcity. His options stay limited, and so does his power. But a man who builds is never without choices. He is not desperate because he knows his value grows every time he invests in himself. And when he sees this, the entire dynamic of relationships changes. Think about it. If you believe she's the only one who will ever want you, you will tolerate her games, her disrespect, her lack of effort. You'll accept half love because you fear having no love at all. But if you know there are countless women in the world who would value the man you've become, you will never beg to stay in a situation that drains you. Options create freedom. And freedom is power. This is why women are often drawn to men who don't seem afraid to lose them. They sense abundance. They sense choice. And ironically, it's that very energy, being unafraid to walk away, that makes them want you more. Because nothing is more attractive than a man who doesn't cling out of fear. Here's the turning point. Once you understand your options, you stop chasing like a beggar. You stop playing small to keep her attention. You stop negotiating your dignity in exchange for her temporary affection. You stand tall, knowing that if one woman leaves, another will arrive. And often, she will be better. And this doesn't just shift how she sees you, it shifts how you see yourself. Suddenly, rejection doesn't scare you. Silence doesn't crush you. Endings don't destroy you. Because you know abundance exists, and you are capable of attracting it. That mindset alone removes desperation from your energy. And women feel it instantly. A man with options doesn't just stay in relationships, he chooses them. He doesn't beg for respect, he requires it. He doesn't fear loss, he accepts it. And because he can walk away at any time, manipulation no longer works. Threats don't work. Guilt doesn't work. Scarcity has no hold on him. So here's the lesson. Build yourself until you have choices. Invest in your body, your career, your skills, your mind. Create options, and you'll never again be trapped by fear of losing one woman, because once you know the reality of options, you stop living in desperation, you start living in freedom, and that freedom makes you untouchable. Number 5. Self-respect. Too many men enter relationships ready to give everything, time, effort, money, devotion, but they leave behind the one thing that matters most, respect for themselves. They put romance above dignity. They put desire above standards. They put beauty above boundaries. And when they do this, they hand over their crown without even realizing it. A man without self-respect is like a kingdom without walls, easy to invade, easy to conquer, easy to control. Women sense it instantly. They know when a man is willing to bend his principles just to keep them close. They know when he will overlook lies, excuses, or broken promises because he fears losing them more than losing his integrity. And once they sense this weakness, they will test it. Again and again. Here's the brutal truth. If you cannot defend your respect, you cannot defend your love either. You can buy gifts, write poems, sacrifice your time, and still end up discarded, because none of it matters if you have shown her you are willing to betray yourself just to keep her. Love without self-respect is not love. It's submission. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine a man who draws clear lines. Not walls to shut people out, but boundaries that define how far others can go. He doesn't accept shouting, name-calling, manipulation, or betrayal disguised as affection. He doesn't accept being treated as an option while giving his all. He doesn't accept half-hearted effort from someone who expects full devotion. That man is not arrogant. He is not cruel. He simply respects himself. And here's the paradox. The moment you place self-respect above desire, you become more attractive, not less. Your words carry weight because you stand firm. Your presence commands attention because you embody strength. You don't have to demand respect. You radiate it. And people, women included, respond to that energy. Self-respect also transforms the entire relationship dynamic. When you raise your standards, she either rises to meet them or she leaves. Either way, you win. If she rises, you gain a partner who values and respects you. If she leaves, you keep your dignity intact. There is no loss in that equation. But without self-respect, the cycle is brutal. You'll tolerate disrespect. You'll rationalize lies. You'll accept mistreatment as normal. And over time, you won't just lose her, you'll lose yourself. That is the slow death of a man's spirit. Here's the awakening. Once you grasp the value of self-respect, everything else falls into place. Your attention becomes more valuable because you no longer waste it. Your emotions fall under control because you refuse to be dragged into chaos. Your options expand because you no longer settle for less. And your love becomes stronger because it comes from choice, not desperation. This is the final truth that seals all the others together. Love without respect is an illusion. A relationship without respect is a prison. And a man without self-respect is already defeated before the first battle begins. So never negotiate your dignity in exchange for temporary affection. Never sacrifice your peace just to say you have someone by your side. Never allow beauty alone to blind you into lowering your standards. Respect yourself first, and everything else in your life will shift. Because once you choose self-respect, you become untouchable. And when a man is untouchable, the games finally end. You've now seen the 5 truths every man must know. Love is not always unconditional. It often comes with terms. Your attention is not free. It is a currency of power. Your emotions are not weapons for her to use. They are tools for you to master. Your options are not scarce. They expand as you build yourself. And above all, your self-respect is not negotiable. It is the foundation of everything. When a man finally opens his eyes to these truths, something profound happens. He stops living blind. He stops giving blindly. He stops handing away his dignity in the name of love. He doesn't become bitter. He becomes awake. He becomes sharp. He becomes deliberate. Picture the difference. One man begs for scraps of affection, always reacting, always chasing, always lowering his standards just to keep someone beside him. The other man stands firm. He observes. He chooses. He protects his energy, guards his attention, controls his emotions, embraces his options, and above all, respects himself. Which man do you think commands respect? Which man do you think women cannot play games with anymore? This is the shift that terrifies manipulation. Because once you see through the illusions, once you stop being moved by the same tricks, once you understand your value, the game is over. The old tactics no longer work. The silent treatments, the tests, the threats, the withdrawal of affection, they fall flat. Because you know the difference now. You are no longer the pawn. You are the player. And here's the truth you must carry with you. Once men know this, women can't win anymore. Not because women lose, but because the games lose. What remains is respect, clarity, and genuine connection. That is the ground where real love can exist. So if you've made it this far, don't keep this awakening to yourself. Subscribe now, so you never miss the strategies that will keep you in control of your relationships. Like and share this video with other men who need to wake up. And leave a comment below. Tell me which of these truths hit you the hardest and how you plan to apply it. Because the moment you live these truths, you stop being controlled. You start being in control. And that is when everything changes. If she really wanted you, you wouldn't be decoding every message, analyzing every silence, or questioning every shift in her tone. But here you are, waiting, wondering, hoping, while she keeps you stuck in a cycle of almost interested, almost committed, almost yours. And that emotional limbo is exactly where she wants you. Because when a woman isn't serious, she won't tell you directly. She'll keep you close enough to use, but far enough to avoid responsibility. Most men don't see it until they're already drained. But you don't need to fall any deeper into her game. In this video, I'll break down the 5 signs she's playing you for a fool, so you can stop being used and start taking back control. You never fall into this kind of situation because she's extraordinary. You fall because the way she treats you plugs into something deeper, something you've ignored for years. Most men don't realize how easily they can be pulled into a woman's emotional game until they're already stuck in it. And it usually starts with one simple vulnerability: the hunger to feel chosen. That hunger makes you overlook the small inconsistencies. It makes you dismiss the hesitation in her voice, the vagueness in her answers, the way she keeps you close enough to taste her affection, but never close enough to claim it. You tell yourself you're being patient, you're being understanding, you're giving her time. But what's really happening is much colder. She's feeding you in emotional crumbs. Just enough warmth to keep you standing at her door, hoping the next moment will be different. And that's the trap. Women understand emotional patterns far better than men. You invest in straight lines: consistency, effort, progress. She moves in cycles: attention, withdrawal, re-engagement. When those two collide, you end up interpreting her behavior through your logic instead of her strategy. She gives you a late-night compliment, a soft touch, a playful message. Your brain takes that hit of dopamine and builds an entire narrative around it. Then she disappears, and instead of questioning her intentions, you question your worth. You weren't blinded by her beauty. You were blinded by your hope. Hope is the most powerful blinder a man can wear. It makes you rewrite her excuses as compassion. It makes you accept inconsistency as complexity. It makes you protect her behavior instead of protecting yourself. You start believing she's misunderstood, overworked, emotionally wounded, anything that keeps you from facing the truth that she's simply not choosing you. And before you know it, you're trapped in a loop you can't name. You wait for her messages. You analyze her tone. You defend her absence. You explain away her mixed behavior because the alternative feels worse, admitting you're being played. But once you understand the psychology behind this dynamic, the next 5 signs become impossible to ignore. And each one reveals exactly how she pulls you deeper into a game she never intended to finish. Number 1. Emotional distance wrapped in flirtation. It always starts the same way, with warmth that feels intentional. She compliments you, lingers when she touches your arm, sends those late-night messages that make you think she's letting you into a private part of her world. She gives you enough sweetness to trigger possibility in your mind, enough softness to make you believe she's opening up. But the moment you try to deepen the connection, everything changes. She dodges vulnerability with calculated precision. When you ask a personal question, she redirects. When you share how you feel, she goes quiet. When you hint at defining what's happening between you, she suddenly becomes confused, not ready, or just seeing where things go. And if you listen carefully, you'll notice that the warmth she gives you is always emotional, surface level, nothing deep. Nothing revealing. Nothing that requires her to risk anything. This isn't an accident, it's a power structure. Flirtation becomes her currency, and your emotional investment becomes the return she collects. She knows you mistake chemistry for connection, and she uses that confusion to keep you orbiting around her. You assume the tension you feel means something meaningful is brewing. but she's giving you performance, not partnership. When a woman wants you, emotional depth comes naturally. When she doesn't, flirtation is just bait. The reason men fall for this dynamic is simple. You assume reciprocity. You assume that if she's showing interest, she must want something real. But what she actually wants is attention without accountability. Your desire boosts her confidence. Your availability pads her ego. Your consistency gives her emotional comfort with zero cost. She gets all the perks of closeness while staying completely protected behind a wall she never intends to lower. Pay attention to the signs. She avoids every conversation that might lead to clarity. She laughs off direct questions. She says she likes what you have, but refuses to define it. She enjoys intimacy, but rejects emotional presence. Everything she offers is suggestive, but never substantial. Just enough to keep you craving the moment she finally opens up. Here's how you see the truth. Stop feeding her emotional oxygen. Pull back. Not dramatically, not as punishment. Simply disconnect the emotional faucet she's been drinking from. If she wants something real, she'll meet you halfway without hesitation. She'll initiate deeper conversations. She'll show genuine curiosity about your world. She'll stop hiding behind pleasant ambiguity. But if she goes cold, fades out, or replaces flirtation with distance the moment you stop chasing, you'll finally see her intention for what it was from the beginning. Not love, not interest, not potential, but control. Number 2. She keeps other men in the conversation to keep you off balance. It sounds harmless at first. She mentions an ex who still texts sometimes, a coworker who won't stop flirting, or a male friend who gets her in ways most people don't. She drops these details casually, like she's just telling stories from her day. But if you listen with the right ears, you'll hear the intention behind every name she brings up. She's not informing you. She's positioning herself. Women don't remind a man they're interested in that other men are pursuing them. A woman who feels something real will actually do the opposite. She'll protect the connection. She'll minimize outside noise. She'll make you feel like you have her focus. When a woman keeps other men in the spotlight, she's using them as psychological leverage. Each name she drops is meant to spark one reaction inside you: insecurity. That insecurity makes you compete without realizing it. It makes you question if you're enough, if she prefers someone else, if you're losing ground. That heightened emotional tension is exactly what she wants. It elevates her perceived value and lowers your sense of certainty in the relationship. And once she creates that imbalance, she has the advantage. What makes this tactic effective is that it feels unprovable. She's not insulting you directly. She's not openly comparing you. She's just being transparent, just sharing, just talking. Meanwhile, she's testing how much you'll tolerate. Will you try harder? Will you chase more? Will you put in extra effort to stand out from the imaginary competition she keeps bringing up? Most men do. They step deeper into the trap because they want to win her attention back. But here's the truth you need to see. When a woman is genuinely interested, she removes competitive anxiety from the equation. She doesn't make you guess where you stand. She doesn't trigger your jealousy to get a reaction. She doesn't use other men as props in her emotional playbook. A woman who wants you will protect your confidence, not sabotage it. The test is simple. Stop reacting. Don't ask questions. Don't flinch. Don't give her the emotional spike she's fishing for. If she senses that her tactics aren't affecting you, she'll do one of two things: intensify the comparisons to get a stronger response, or quietly distance herself when the game stops being fun. Either outcome gives you clarity, and clarity is what exposes the intention she's been hiding. She was never trying to connect with you. She was trying to control the dynamic. Once you stop feeding the insecurity she's been cultivating, the mask slips. And you finally see that the transparency she offered was never honesty. It was manipulation disguised as casual conversation. Number 3, your effort keeps increasing while her appreciation keeps shrinking. This is the stage where most men lose themselves without realizing it. You start strong, planning thoughtful dates, showing up when she needs support, remembering the little things she mentions, giving consistency because that's how you express interest. At first, she responds just enough to make you feel like you're moving forward. But then, something subtle shifts. No matter what you do, it's never enough. You become more intentional. She becomes more distant. You get more thoughtful. She gets more critical. You invest emotionally. She invests in excuses. A woman who values you won't make you feel like you're running on a treadmill, moving constantly but getting nowhere. But a woman who's playing you will keep shifting the target 1 week. She wants you to be more spontaneous, so you adjust. The next week she wants someone more emotionally available, so you open up. Then she tells you the timing is wrong, or she's confused, or not sure what she wants. Notice the pattern. It's a moving finish line designed to make you chase an outcome she never intended to give. The reality is harsh but simple. She doesn't want a solution. She wants the power that comes from watching you try, as long as you're working to win her over. She doesn't have to give anything back. You become the emotional safety net. Dependable, comforting, reliable. She doesn't have to commit to you because your presence is guaranteed whether she shows up or not. And the more you try, the more she withholds. Not because you're lacking, but because your effort threatens the imbalance she benefits from. This dynamic chips away at your self-worth. You start believing you're not enough, when the truth is, she's not looking for enough. She's looking for control. She needs you slightly uncertain, slightly insecure, slightly off balance. That's how she keeps the upper hand. She wants the boyfriend energy without the boyfriend responsibility. Your consistency becomes her convenience. Look closely at the micro behaviors. She praises you only when she senses you're slipping away. She criticizes you when you show enthusiasm. She pulls you close when she's lonely and pushes you away when you get too real. Her appreciation is rationed. Her disappointment is unlimited. A woman who wants you doesn't operate like this. If she wanted you, your presence would be enough. If she doesn't, no effort will ever fix it. The real test is withdrawal, not addition. Pull back, not to punish her, but to stop exhausting yourself. When the chase ends, the truth surfaces. A woman who values you will meet you where you are. A woman who's using you will complain, manipulate, or disappear. And either way, you finally get your answer. Number 4. Her inconsistency is not confusion. It's a calculated way to control the rhythm of your emotions. Men often misinterpret this dynamic as mixed feelings or emotional complexity. But there's nothing complex about what she's doing. She warms up just enough to pull you closer, then cools down just enough to keep you guessing. It's the emotional version of tightening and loosening a leash. Not enough pressure to make you walk away, but enough to remind you who holds the tension. She texts you non-stop for 2 days, then disappears for 3. She tells you she misses you, then avoids making plans. She flirts heavily at night, then acts distant the next morning. And every time you think you understand her, she shifts again. That shift isn't accidental. It keeps you in a state where you can't predict her next move, which makes you focus on her even more. This cycle works because your mind becomes addicted to the uncertainty. The human brain is wired to chase intermittent rewards. Unpredictable highs hit harder than consistent ones. She learned that a long time ago. Every warm message, every soft glance, every moment of attention is followed by silence or withdrawal. The contrast creates an emotional spike inside you, one you confuse with chemistry. It isn't chemistry. It's conditioning. And here's the part most men never see. She only becomes consistent when she senses you pulling away. That's when she suddenly remembers to compliment you, to initiate conversations, to bring back the version of herself that hooked you in the first place. The moment you lean in again, she goes cold. It's not moodiness, it's not stress, it's not timing, it's strategy, because inconsistency keeps her in control. You make the mistake of searching for a reason. Was she tired? Did you say something wrong? Is she overwhelmed? Did she need space? But the moment you start diagnosing her behavior, you fall deeper into the trap. She wants you analyzing her, not analyzing the pattern. If you focus on the moment, she controls the narrative. If you focus on the pattern, the truth becomes obvious. Real interest is consistent. Fake interest is chaotic. Women know exactly what they're doing when they send mixed signals. Even the confused ones understand the power of uncertainty. No woman accidentally keeps someone emotionally hooked for weeks or months. When she cares, she shows it. When she doesn't, she lets inconsistency do the dirty work. The test is clarity. Stop reacting to the warm moments and start measuring the overall rhythm. Does she match your effort? Do her actions align with her words? Does she show up consistently or only when she senses distance? When you stop chasing the highs and start evaluating the pattern, the illusion dissolves. And what felt like chemistry reveals itself for what it always was. Control disguised as confusion. Number 5. She's never available for you, but she's always available for what she needs from you. This is one of the clearest signs a woman is taking you for granted, yet it's the one men excuse the most. She tells you she's overwhelmed with work, drained from life, exhausted, busy, stressed, an endless rotation of reasons why she can't make plans right now. But somehow that same woman has the time and energy to post selfies, update stories, go out with friends, binge entire shows, and stay active everywhere except with you. She's not actually busy, she's selective. When a woman wants you, she makes room. When she doesn't, she gives you what's left. And in this case, that's almost nothing. She doesn't disappear entirely because she still wants access to your comfort and your attention. So instead of cutting you off, she maintains a thin thread of connection. Just enough for you to stay available, not enough for you to feel valued. That's why she resurfaces only when she needs something. When she wants emotional comfort, she calls you. When she needs a favor, she texts you. When she's lonely, she shows affection. When her ego dips, she sends a "miss you" message out of nowhere. But the moment you try to reciprocate and ask for time, presence, or effort, she slips behind the same wall of excuses. She knows you'll accept the scraps because you've been conditioned to think her sudden moments of warmth mean she secretly cares. They don't. They mean she wants to withdraw from your emotional bank account without making a single deposit. Look at the micro patterns. She leaves you unseen, but replies instantly to the things that benefit her. She cancels on you last minute, but never cancels the plans that excite her. She leans on you emotionally after disappearing for days, expecting you to be exactly where she left you. And the worst part? You've started normalizing it. You've convinced yourself that her inconsistent presence is still better than losing her completely. That mindset is exactly what keeps you trapped. A woman who values you doesn't treat you like an emotional convenience store, open when she needs something, closed when you ask for reciprocation. Her availability reflects her interest. Her presence reflects her intention. Her effort reflects her respect. The test is simple and revealing. Go silent. Stop volunteering your time. Stop offering emotional labor. Stop making yourself accessible on demand. When you remove the comfort she's been taking from you, her response will tell you everything. If she disappears, you were never chosen. If she suddenly reaches out, she's reacting to the loss of control, not a surge of genuine affection. The moment you stop giving, you'll know exactly who she was. Walking away from a woman who's been playing you isn't difficult because she's special. It's difficult because she activated parts of you that haven't been acknowledged in years. The addiction to her attention, the hope that she might finally choose you, the fantasy version of her that you've built in your mind. Those are the real chains. And most men stay longer than they should, because they're not fighting her. They're fighting their own attachment to the potential she represented. You hold on because you've already invested time, energy, emotion. You tell yourself you're close to something meaningful, that if you stay patient, if you adjust, if you show her a little more understanding, she'll eventually meet you halfway. That's the sunk cost fallacy disguised as loyalty. You're not staying because she's worth it. You're staying because it's painful to admit that you misread her. The only way out is to shift your mindset. You're not walking away from her. You're walking away from the version of yourself that tolerated the bare minimum. You're walking away from your own weakness, not from a woman who was never fully there. Start with emotional detachment. Stop analyzing her actions. Stop replaying her mixed signals. Stop trying to decode behavior that was designed to confuse you. Treat her distance as an answer, not a puzzle. When you detach emotionally, you stop responding to the hooks she throws out to keep you orbiting her. Then draw a real boundary through silence. Not silence as punishment, but silence as clarity. The moment you stop offering unlimited access to your time and your emotional availability, the dynamic flips. She loses her leverage. And you regain the power she's been siphoning from you. Stop giving her the validation she didn't earn. Every compliment, every reassuring message, every attempt to prove your worth was feeding her ego, not building a relationship. Cut the supply. Redirect that energy back into your own life, your health, your work, your goals, your masculine foundation. When your focus shifts inward, the emotional fog lifts. This is where everything changes. The moment you stop chasing, you stop bleeding self-respect. The moment you stop giving, you stop being used. The moment you stop trying to win her, you realize she was never the prize. You were. You don't lose the woman. You lose the illusion she sold you. And that is the moment you finally take your power back. You've seen the pattern now, the flirtation without depth, the mentions of other men meant to keep you competing, the endless effort she absorbs without appreciation, the hot and cold rhythm that keeps you chasing clarity she never intends to give, the selective availability that reveals exactly where you stand in her priorities. None of these signs happen by accident. They form a blueprint, one that belongs to a woman who treats connection like a game and your attention like a resource. When you step back and look at the full picture, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. A woman who wants something real will never leave you guessing. She won't weaponize her warmth. She won't destabilize your confidence to raise her value. She won't keep you around for comfort while offering nothing substantial in return. Men only tolerate these dynamics when they're blinded by hope, chemistry, or the fear of losing the version of her they created in their minds. But every moment, you accept inconsistency. You teach her that she can access your loyalty without giving anything back. You deserve better than emotional scraps. You deserve someone who shows up with intention, not confusion. Someone who matches your effort, not drains it. Someone who values your presence instead of exploiting your availability. And the moment you recognize even one of these signs, you owe it to yourself to stop negotiating with someone who refuses to choose you. Waiting for all five to line up is how men waste years of their lives on women who never had the capacity to love them in the first place. So take a hard look at your situation. Ask yourself the question most men avoid. Are you being loved or are you being used? Are you in a relationship? Or are you filling an emotional gap for someone who disappears the moment she's satisfied? Your answer is the beginning of your freedom. If this opened your eyes, Stay here with me. Subscribe so you don't fall into the same trap again. Like the video, if it hits somewhere you've been afraid to confront, share it with the men in your life who need to hear what you finally understand. And speak up in the comments. Your clarity might be the wake-up call another man needs. You're not here to be chosen. You're here to choose. And the moment you act like it, the game ends. You think women play games with silence, mixed signals, or sudden distance, but the truth is, they start playing you long before any of that happens. It begins with 4 simple words, so soft, so harmless, that you never question them. And that's exactly why they work. Every man has heard these words. Almost none understand what they reveal. If you've ever found yourself waiting, hoping, overthinking, or fighting for clarity that never comes, chances are these words were used on you, not to inform you, to shape you. In this video, I'm exposing the 4 words women say right before they pull you into a dynamic where she holds the leverage and you lose control. And once you see what these words really mean, you'll never fall into that trap again. Language is the quietest weapon a woman will ever use, and the most efficient one, because it leaves no fingerprints. Most men look for signs in her actions, the distance, the mixed signals, the sudden drop in warmth. But what they miss is that a woman rarely starts with behavior. When she wants to influence the dynamic without taking responsibility for it, she uses a single, well-chosen word. And that word shapes the entire emotional frame you operate in. This is what psychologists call framing. One word can bend your interpretation without you noticing. She says it softly, casually, as if it means nothing. But inside that tiny syllable is the real question she's asking. How much can I steer you without ever pushing you? Imagine a man who keeps hearing a woman tell him she's busy. He takes it at face value. He thinks she's overwhelmed, tired, managing life. What he doesn't see is the calibration happening underneath. She's not measuring her schedule, she's measuring him. Every delayed reply, every vague excuse, every small withdrawal. It's all data. She's watching how far you'll bend, how quickly you'll chase, how easily your standards dissolve when you think you're being patient. Women test not because they're cruel, but because they're wired to look for the man who leads himself. A man who anchors. A man who doesn't drown in the emotional tide the moment she shifts the current. That's why the 4 words you're about to learn matter so much. They're not random, they're tools. Each one categorizes you. Are you self-governing? Are you insecure? Are you easy to guide? Are you impossible to move? Let me show you the 4 words women use when they're not choosing you, but want you to keep choosing them. Number 1. Busy. When a woman tells you she's been so busy lately, most men hear a schedule problem. They think she's juggling work, stress, family, life. But when a woman is genuinely interested, she doesn't become less available. She becomes resourceful. Busy isn't about time. It's about priority. And the moment that word slips out too often, she's not revealing her workload. She's revealing where you sit in her hierarchy. Here's what most men never notice. Busy is a form of control through inconsistency. She shows up just enough to keep you hoping, but not enough to give you certainty. That unpredictability triggers something powerful in the male brain: intermittent reinforcement. The same psychological mechanism that keeps people addicted to slot machines keeps men addicted to women who give attention in short, unpredictable bursts. She's not consciously thinking, "Let me condition him." But she is absolutely watching what happens when she delays the reward. Do you wait longer? Do you try harder? Do you shrink your needs to fit her rhythm? Now imagine this. A man texts her good morning. No reply. He checks his phone at lunch. Still nothing. By evening, he tells himself, she's just busy. The next day, she suddenly responds with warmth, a cute emoji, maybe even a voice note. His brain lights up like he won the lottery. He didn't. But the contrast between absence and attention creates the illusion of value. The more he invests, the busier she becomes. The moment he pulls his energy back, she magically becomes free again. From a woman's perspective, there's a simple truth. When she wants you, she doesn't get less available. She gets creative. She finds 2 minutes. She sends a quick note. She makes effort visible. Women who truly desire a man fight for space with him, not excuses. But men make one critical mistake. They think patience is attractive. They think waiting shows loyalty or maturity or emotional strength. It doesn't. To a woman testing your boundaries, waiting is submission. It tells her she can ration her presence and you'll still stay. So how do you break the busy illusion? You don't confront her. You don't chase clarity. You don't explain your feelings in a 3-paragraph text. You simply reduce access. You match her distance without hostility. You remove the reward she expected, your attention. When she realizes she can't trigger you by pulling away, the entire frame collapses. The space she created to test you becomes the space she fears losing. Because indifference is the only language that breaks the busy illusion. And when you stop serving her delays, you stop being controlled by them. That's the moment the power shifts, because you're no longer competing for her time. She's competing for your presence. Number 2, maybe. A woman says, maybe I'll let you know. And most men hear possibility. What she actually gave you is suspension. A soft, subtle cage that keeps you emotionally available without requiring her to commit. Maybe isn't a doorway. It's a holding pattern. It keeps you circling while she decides whether you're worth landing for, or whether someone else has already earned the runway. Picture the moment. You ask her out on Saturday. She smiles through text, drops a maybe, and disappears for 48 hours. Then suddenly, she posts a story, laughing in a car that isn't yours. Most men try to be polite. They tell themselves not to pressure her. They wait, thinking patience will eventually be rewarded. But to a woman, waiting doesn't read as respect. It reads as compliance. Maybe serves one purpose, maintaining control of the pacing. She gets to check her options, her mood, her convenience, while you stay emotionally parked, hoping the coin flips your way. That imbalance is where she evaluates you. Not your looks, not your money, your boundaries. Here's the truth many men don't want to hear. When a woman wants you, she doesn't gamble with the chance of losing you. Maybe only shows up when she's unsure, uninvested, or unwilling to close the window completely. And this is where men trap themselves. They double text. They soften their tone. They send another friendly invitation. They try to look easygoing, patient, understanding. They don't realize that every extra ounce of effort reinforces her power. The more you wait, the less she feels she has to choose. Let me give you a familiar scenario. A man spends days hanging on a maybe. She never gives a date. She never gives a time. She never gives a plan. But he keeps checking his phone, interpreting silence as progress. Meanwhile, she's keeping him on emotional standby, just in case the men she really wants don't follow through. You were never the priority. You were the insurance policy. So how do you break out of the soft cage? You treat maybe as a closed door. Not with anger, not with attitude, but with clarity. A simple shift. Let me know when you're sure, and then you step back. You stop offering time she hasn't earned. You stop scheduling your life around her uncertainty. You stop proving yourself to someone who hasn't chosen you. Something powerful happens when a man no longer waits. The illusion dissolves. A woman can't keep you in limbo if you refuse to live there. Suddenly, she must decide, commit or lose access. And for the first time, she feels the cost of her ambiguity. A woman can't cage a man who refuses to wait. And when you treat your time as valuable, she's forced to decide whether she actually wants a place in it. Number 3. Friend. There's a moment every man remembers, the moment a woman looks at him with a soft smile, tilts her head, and says, "You're such a good friend." It feels harmless, even flattering. But inside that single word lies the sharpest downgrade a woman can deliver without ever sounding cruel. Because when she calls you friend, she's not bonding with you. She's labeling you. Women categorize men faster than men realize. Within minutes of meeting you, she places you in one of 4 boxes. The man she feels attraction for, the man she respects, the man she can use, and the man she can confide in without ever having to choose. Friend is that last box. It means you are safe but not desired, valued but not chosen, present but not claimed. And here's the unspoken translation. You give me emotional benefits without requiring emotional commitment. Let me paint the picture. A man answers her late-night messages. He listens to her stress, her drama, her heartbreak. He gives comfort, reassurance, guidance. He thinks this closeness is building intimacy. What he doesn't see is that she leaves those conversations lighter, and then goes to another man to feel excitement. He becomes her emotional outlet, her therapist, her cushion, everything except the role he actually wants. From a psychological standpoint, this is emotional labor, something women deeply value, but something they also learn to take for granted when it costs them nothing. When you give attention, empathy, presence, and availability without boundaries, she consumes it like air, effortlessly, unconsciously, endlessly. The mistake men make is believing that the more they give, the more desirable they become. But attraction doesn't grow from service. It grows from distance, direction, and self-respect. The moment you make yourself the solution to all her emotional discomforts, you erase the polarity that makes her see you as a man rather than a support system. So how do you escape this trap? You don't try to earn her interest. You don't increase your efforts. You reduce them. You stop replying instantly. You stop absorbing her drama. You stop playing the role she assigned you without your consent. Not to punish her. Women aren't the enemy. But to reset the dynamic she unconsciously pushed out of balance. Here's what happens when you remove access. Her emotional pattern breaks. The comfort she relied on disappears. And suddenly, she has to reevaluate who you are. For the first time, she sees you not as a cushion, but as a man with structure, a man who doesn't let his desire override his dignity. You don't escape the friend zone by loving harder. You escape it by stepping out. And when you stop being the place she unloads her emotions, you become someone she has to notice, not someone she simply uses. Number 4. Soon. Few words keep a man stuck longer than this one. We'll hang soon. I'll text you soon. I'll be ready soon. It sounds optimistic, gentle, almost promising. But soon is the most sophisticated stall tactic a woman uses when she wants to hold you in her orbit without offering you a place in her world. It's a future that never arrives, because it was never meant to. Soon pacifies you. It keeps you emotionally invested while she keeps her options open. It lets her preserve the illusion of interest while contributing nothing concrete. From a psychological standpoint, this is temporal delay reinforcement. She feeds you hope, so you overlook the reality. Her actions aren't matching her words. Let me give you a picture every man has lived through. You ask her when she's free. She smiles through text and says, "Let's plan something soon." A week passes, then 2. Suddenly it's been 21 days, and the closest thing to a real plan is that single dusty promise still sitting in your message thread. Meanwhile, she's out living her life, posting stories, meeting people, exploring possibilities that don't include you. Not because she hates you, but because she doesn't fear losing you. And that's the part men struggle to see. Soon is what she says when she wants to keep the door cracked just enough to step through if she ever wants to. but not enough for you to step in. Women use soon for two reasons. She doesn't want to invest in you, but she doesn't want to lose you either. You become her emotional reserve, her maybe later, her backup plan in case the men she's actually pursuing fail to deliver. And most men, driven more by hope than reality, let themselves believe the delay means nothing. They interpret vagueness as patience and patience as virtue. But hope without evidence isn't loyalty, it's self-abandonment. So how do you break the spell of soon? You withdraw from the fog and demand clarity through action, not emotion. The moment she uses that word, you step back, not dramatically, not angrily, just decisively. You don't chase the promise. You don't wait for the next breadcrumb. You simply treat soon as a sign she hasn't made a real choice. And you stop offering the comfort of being an unclaimed option. A future that is real has a date, a plan, a place, a time. Something you can point to and say, this exists. If it doesn't exist, it isn't your future. It's a placeholder she's using to manage your expectations. And here's the shift she never sees coming. The moment you stop accepting vague promises, you stop being the man she can indefinitely delay. That's when respect enters the room. Because you're no longer a passenger waiting for her timeline. You're a man with boundaries, momentum, and direction. A woman may delay a man who follows her pace, but she never delays a man who sets his own. And once you stop letting your life sit on her soon, she has to either step forward or step out. She didn't use those 4 words to describe her situation. She used them to measure yours. Busy, maybe, friend, soon. None of them reveal her schedule, her intent, or her availability. They reveal your reaction. Because every time she drops one of those words, she's not just speaking. She's observing. She's watching what you do with uncertainty, with distance, with ambiguity. That reaction tells her everything about where you stand in the hierarchy of men. Here's the loop most men never recognize. She uses the word. You interpret it emotionally. You adjust your behavior around it. She evaluates the adjustment. Your value is silently redefined. That's why the real danger isn't the word itself. It's how quickly you surrender your position when you hear it. A woman doesn't lower your value. She lets you show her how low you're willing to place yourself. I've seen this unfold countless times. A man sits across from me, confused, frustrated, convinced he's been played. When I walk him backward through the dynamic, he realizes something painful. The control she had was the control he gave. Busy made him try harder. Maybe made him wait. Friend made him serve. Soon made him hope. 4 tiny words shaped an entire relationship simply because he never questioned their framing. But that same man can transform his reality the moment he stops reacting and starts observing. The moment he hears a vague word and doesn't personalize it. The moment he stops contorting himself to fit a woman's inconsistency and instead anchors into his own standards. This is the shift, from reacting to leading, from seeking reassurance to becoming the reassurance, from needing clarity to creating it through action. Women don't respect a man who needs certainty from them. They respect the man who carries certainty within himself, the man who doesn't flinch at ambiguity, the man who doesn't overinvest in unclear signals, the man who doesn't let language, soft, subtle, strategic, bend his value. Control isn't taken. It's returned the moment you stop surrendering it. And when you stop folding under those 4 little words, you stop being the man she can test, stall, or downgrade. You become the man she has to choose intentionally, or lose completely. You've now seen the truth most men never catch. The 4 words themselves were never the threat. The real danger was how easily those words could pull you out of your center. Busy controlled your time. Maybe controlled your hope. Friend controlled your role. Soon controlled your future. Each one redirected your focus away from your own value and toward her approval. That's why so many men feel drained, confused, or unchosen, not because they lacked worth, but because they kept reacting to signals that were never meant to guide them. When you stop responding the way she expects, the entire dynamic changes. You're no longer the man waiting for clarity. You're the man who creates it. You're no longer the man adjusting himself to fit her uncertainty. You're the man whose standards force others to rise or fall away. And when a woman realizes she can't move you with words, that's the moment she begins respecting you. Not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it. So if these 4 words have ever held power over you, let this be the turning point. Choose self-control over self-doubt. Choose direction over delay. Choose yourself over the fantasy of what she might eventually give. Because the moment you stop surrendering your emotional authority is the moment you take back everything you thought she took from you. If this opened your eyes, subscribe for more. Hit like and share it with the men around you. Someone you know is stuck in one of these patterns right now. And if you want a breakdown tailored to your situation, leave a comment below. I'll tell you exactly what she's signaling and exactly how to take your power back. When you master your reactions, you master the relationship, and that is where control truly begins. She texts you when she's bored. She disappears when you're available. She keeps you close enough to give her attention, but never close enough to choose you. And the worst part? You feel it. That quiet humiliation of being kept instead of wanted. Of being an option, not a priority. Let me be very clear with you. She's not confused. She's not figuring things out. She knows exactly where you stand in her life. The real problem isn't that you're not good enough. It's that you're playing the wrong role in her world, and she's benefiting from it. Today, I'm going to show you 5 ways to stop letting a woman treat you like an option, and more importantly, how to shift your position so this pattern never repeats again. I'm speaking to you as a woman who understands how women think, how attraction actually works, and why certain men get stuck in this painful position without realizing how they got there. This isn't about manipulation, and it's not about turning into someone you're not. It's about changing the power dynamic, quietly, decisively, and permanently. If you've ever felt sidelined, overlooked, or emotionally kept on standby, this conversation is for you. Before we go deeper, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Because what I'm about to break down will change how you see relationships from this point forward. She didn't forget your value. She sorted it. That's the part most men struggle to accept because it sounds colder than the truth they want. But as a woman, I need you to hear this clearly. When a woman treats you like an option, it's not confusion, it's classification. Women constantly organize the men in their lives into emotional categories, not consciously, not maliciously, but instinctively. And when you land in the option category, it's because you serve a function without creating pressure. You regulate her ego. You provide attention when she needs it. You're safe, familiar, and reliably available. That's the first mechanism at play. Ego regulation. When her confidence dips, when the man she wants isn't giving her reassurance, she reaches for the person who always answers. Not because she misses him, but because he stabilizes how she feels about herself. The second mechanism is attention backup. In modern dating, attention is currency, and backup attention is insurance. You're the policy she keeps active, so she never has to sit with silence, uncertainty, or rejection for too long. Then there's mate switching. In an environment where options feel endless, women don't choose until they feel compelled to. And nothing kills that urgency faster than a man who is always ready, always waiting, always emotionally on standby. So she keeps you close, but never close enough. You don't challenge her comfort. You don't force a decision. You don't make her risk losing you. And because of that, she never has to choose. This is where most men misread the situation. They think consistency will be rewarded. They believe patience equals maturity. They assume availability signals security. From a female perspective, it often signals the opposite. Because desire doesn't grow where there's no tension. Respect doesn't form where access is guaranteed. And attraction doesn't deepen when a man centers his emotional availability around a woman who hasn't earned it. Here's the uncomfortable truth you need to sit with. A man who is always available is rarely selected. Not because he lacks value, but because he never requires a decision. When you're easy to keep, you're easy not to choose. Number 1. Stop explaining your worth. Most men don't realize this is where they start losing power. Not when she pulls away. Not when she takes longer to reply. But when they feel the urge to explain themselves. You explain because you want to be understood. You explain because you want fairness. You explain because you believe that if she truly saw your intentions, your loyalty, your effort, she would treat you differently. That instinct feels honest. It feels mature. It feels right. From a woman's perspective, it often reads very differently. When a man explains his value, it doesn't sound like clarity. It sounds like insecurity. Not because he lacks worth, but because he's trying to convince someone who hasn't asked to be convinced. Here's what most women experience in those moments. A long message, emotional detail, carefully chosen words meant to create connection. And what registers instead is pressure, emotional weight. A quiet shift in dynamics where the man is now seeking validation instead of embodying certainty. Attraction doesn't respond to monologues. Respect doesn't rise because someone made a good case for themselves. You are not a presentation. You are not a pitch. And your value is not something that needs to be packaged and sold. The moment you start explaining why you matter, you hand over leverage. You move from being observed to being evaluated. And once that happens, the power dynamic tilts away from you. This is why explanations rarely change behavior. They might produce temporary reassurance, longer replies, softer words, but not real investment. Because attention can be given without respect. Comfort can exist without commitment. Every explanation quietly tells her the same thing. I'm still here, even if you don't choose me. And that's the habit you have to break. The shift happens when you stop trying to be understood and start letting your actions speak in silence. When you don't rush to clarify your intentions. When you don't defend your position. When you don't chase emotional resolution. You let your standards do the talking. You let your presence become conditional. You let space replace speeches. And something changes. Not because she suddenly understands you better, but because you finally stop negotiating your worth. A man who knows his value doesn't explain it. He demonstrates it through what he allows and what he quietly withdraws from. When you stop explaining, you don't lose connection. You lose the illusion that talking was ever the solution. Here's where many men relapse, right after they swear they're done explaining. She sends a long message. She replies with warmth. She asks a question that feels personal. And suddenly, hope sneaks back in. From your side, it feels like progress. From hers, it's often just attention management. You need to understand this distinction clearly. Attention is not value, and responsiveness is not investment. Women can give attention without emotional risk. They can engage, flirt, even open up slightly, without ever changing how they see you. Because attention costs nothing. Commitment does. Let me give you a scenario I see all the time. She goes quiet for days. You pull back. Then she returns with a thoughtful message, maybe even an apology. Your nervous system relaxes. You think, she gets it now. But what actually happened is simpler. She felt the absence of your attention and reached out to restore it. Not because she chose you, but because she noticed you stepping away. That's the difference most men miss. When a woman values you, she moves toward consistency. When she values your attention, she moves just enough to keep it accessible. Long texts don't mean depth. Fast replies don't mean priority. Emotional tone doesn't equal emotional commitment. What matters is pattern, not moment. If she engages only when you pull back, if warmth appears only when access feels threatened, if closeness never turns into clarity, then you're not being chosen, you're being managed. And here's the truth that stings, but frees you. If someone has to be nudged into recognizing your value, they're not overlooking it. They're opting out of it. They're making a choice that keeps their comfort intact. This is why chasing attention is such a dangerous trap. It conditions you to mistake reaction for intention. It keeps you emotionally invested in crumbs instead of standards. When you stop measuring progress by messages and start measuring it by behavior, the fog lifts. You stop asking, "Is she interested?" and start asking, "Is this consistent?" And once you see that clearly, you don't need reassurance anymore. You need alignment. Because real value isn't proven by how much attention someone gives you. It's revealed by how much access they're willing to earn. Number 2. Boundaries are action, not warnings. This is where many men believe they're doing the right thing, while quietly sabotaging themselves. They talk about boundaries. They explain what they won't tolerate. They express disappointment, frustration, even hurt. But when the behavior repeats, nothing changes. From a woman's perspective, that doesn't look like strength. It looks like flexibility disguised as standards. Here's the truth most people avoid. A boundary without consequence is not a boundary. It's a suggestion. And suggestions don't shape behavior. Outcomes do. Women don't respond to what you say you deserve. They respond to what you consistently enforce. Not because they're cruel, but because human beings adapt to the rules of access they're given. This is where fear enters the picture. Men hesitate to enforce boundaries because they're afraid of losing her. Afraid that if they pull back, she'll walk away. Afraid that standing firm will end the connection for good. And sometimes, it will. But what's worse than someone leaving when you draw a line is someone staying while slowly eroding your self-respect. When you allow disrespect once, it sets a precedent. When you allow it twice, it becomes permission. And by the third time, it's the relationship. This is why boundaries must be behavioral, not verbal. When someone disrespects your time, you don't argue about it. You remove your time. When effort drops, you don't negotiate for more. You reduce access. When consistency disappears, you don't chase clarity. You step back into alignment. That's not punishment. That's self-regulation. From a female psychological standpoint, this is where respect either forms or disappears. A man who enforces boundaries without anger, without drama, without explanation, communicates something powerful. My presence is conditional on how I'm treated. And here's the part that surprises many men. The women who are capable of real connection don't test boundaries. They recognize them and adjust. The ones who push, poke, and cross lines are revealing exactly why those boundaries are necessary. This is the shift you need to make. Stop trying to be understood and start being consistent. Because the moment your actions match your standards, the dynamic changes. Either she rises to meet them or she removes herself. And both outcomes restore your power. A woman who truly respects you will never need to be reminded where the line is. She'll feel it. Number 3, refocus on your goals. This is where the real power shift begins, because nothing pulls a man out of the option category faster than reclaiming his direction. Distraction doesn't ruin men overnight. It erodes them slowly. One unanswered message, one delayed reply, one night spent replaying conversations instead of moving forward. And before you realize it, your emotional state is reacting to her behavior instead of being anchored in your purpose. From the outside, it looks harmless. From the inside, it's devastating. The moment your schedule revolves around her availability, you've already lost leverage. When your mood rises and falls based on whether she texts back, she's no longer just part of your life. She's controlling its rhythm. From a woman's perspective, this is immediately felt. Not logically, but viscerally. A man without direction feels emotionally heavy. He feels absorbent instead of grounded. And no matter how kind or consistent he is, that lack of internal focus quietly lowers his position. Here's what many men don't want to hear. Attraction grows toward motion, toward clarity, toward a man who is building something that doesn't pause for uncertainty. A man with goals doesn't chase alignment. He attracts it. That doesn't mean working non-stop or pretending not to care. It means structuring your life so your time, energy, and attention are invested forward, not upward, towards someone who hasn't committed. Set a target that demands discipline. Create a daily structure that doesn't bend for emotional fluctuation. Replace motivation with consistency. Because motivation fades, but systems don't. When your focus shifts back to your growth, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop monitoring her reactions. You stop waiting. You stop interpreting silence as meaning. And she feels that shift. Not because you announced it. Not because you threatened to leave. But because your energy is no longer available on demand. A man who is deeply engaged in his own progress doesn't need to withdraw attention intentionally. His attention becomes scarce naturally. And scarcity, earned through purpose, not manipulation, is what moves you out of the option space entirely. Because a man who is busy building his life doesn't have room to be treated like a backup. Number 4. Choose growth over closure. Closure feels mature. It sounds healthy. It convinces you that one last conversation will finally set you free. But from a psychological standpoint, closure is often just attachment, wearing a cleaner mask. Men chase closure because they want their pain to be acknowledged. They want the confusion to make sense. They want to hear something, anything, that confirms the effort they gave wasn't wasted. Here's what I need you to understand from a woman's perspective. When someone consistently treats you like an option, they already gave you their answer. Not with words, but with behavior. And behavior doesn't need clarification. The urge for closure keeps you emotionally tethered. It keeps you replaying moments, rereading messages, imagining explanations that would soften the reality. But explanations don't heal wounds caused by patterns. They just delay acceptance. This is the part that's hard to hear. The person who caused the damage is rarely capable of providing the repair. Not because they're evil, but because they benefited from the dynamic exactly as it was. If she wanted to choose you, she would have. If she valued consistency, she would have shown it. If she feared losing you, you would have felt it. From a female psychological lens, clarity isn't delivered through conversation. It's revealed through distance. Space removes distortion. Absence exposes truth. This is where growth enters. Growth doesn't ask why. Growth asks, what now? When you stop chasing explanations and redirect that energy into yourself, your habits, your structure, your standards, your nervous system starts to recalibrate. You regain emotional balance, not because you understand her better, but because you're no longer orienting your life around her decisions. Distance gives clarity. Growth gives power. And here's the shift most men underestimate. When you choose growth over closure, you exit the loop entirely. You stop waiting for permission to move on. You stop hoping for validation from someone who already demonstrated their priorities. Closure keeps you facing backward. Growth turns you forward. One keeps you tied to her version of events. The other puts you back in control of your own. You don't need her explanation to heal. You need momentum. You need alignment. You need to outgrow the version of yourself that needed answers from someone who never chose you. Because once you grow past the situation, closure becomes irrelevant. Number 5. Walk away without drama. This is the moment most men get wrong, not because they don't want to leave, but because they want to leave and be understood. They want the last word. They want their pain acknowledged. They want her to finally realize what she lost. and that desire quietly hands the power right back to her. From a woman's perspective, drama doesn't signal strength. It signals emotional entanglement. The more explanation, emotion, and intensity you attach to your exit, the more it confirms that she still has access to you. Walking away without drama is different. It's not cold. It's not cruel. It's controlled. This is where ego and self-respect split paths. Ego wants to be seen. Self-respect wants peace. When you disappear calmly, without speeches, without ultimatums, without emotional outbursts, something very specific happens psychologically. She doesn't feel abandoned. She feels cut off. Not from affection, but from access. And that's what creates impact. Women don't feel loss when love disappears. They feel loss when availability does. This is an important distinction. Love can fade slowly. Access disappears instantly. And when it does, the dynamic flips. Not because you planned it, but because you finally stopped offering yourself to a situation that wasn't choosing you. Now let's be clear about something. This is not ghosting. Ghosting is avoidance. Protection is intentional. You're not trying to punish her. You're not trying to teach her a lesson. You're choosing to remove your time and energy from a space where they weren't respected. Silence in this context is not a tactic. It's alignment. When you walk away quietly, you send a message without saying a word. I know my value, and I don't negotiate it. That message lands far deeper than any explanation ever could. And whether she reflects, regrets, or replaces you is no longer your concern. Because the moment you leave without drama, you stop performing for her understanding and start answering to yourself. Here's the truth that closes this chapter. Silence is not a weapon against her. It's loyalty to yourself. And a man who can walk away with calm certainty is no longer an option. He's already moved beyond the game. This is where everything comes together, not as a tactic, but as an identity shift. At this point, you need to understand something crucial. You were never meant to handle her. You were meant to change the version of yourself that tolerated being handled. When a man focuses on fixing the situation, he stays trapped inside it. When he focuses on becoming someone with standards, the situation either rises or disappears. That's the difference between being an option and being a standard. A standard doesn't chase. A standard doesn't explain. A standard doesn't negotiate its worth. When you become that man, the rules change automatically. Not because you demand better treatment, but because you no longer participate in dynamics that require you to ask for it. This is the part that feels uncomfortable at first. Some women will pull away, some connections will fade, and that's not loss, it's filtration. You're no longer available to people who only thrived when you were overgiving, over-explaining, and undervaluing yourself. Here's what most men don't realize. You don't lose her when you step into your standard. You lose the version of the relationship that required you to shrink. And in return, you get something far more valuable. You get yourself back. You stop waking up wondering where you stand. You stop monitoring tone, timing, and signals. You stop needing reassurance to feel steady. Because your identity no longer depends on being chosen. From a woman's perspective, this shift is unmistakable. A man who knows his boundaries, protects his time, and moves with quiet certainty occupies a completely different psychological space. He's not auditioning, he's evaluating. And that's the moment the dynamic flips. Not every woman will qualify for access to this version of you. And that's exactly the point. You were never meant to be universally available. You were meant to be selective, grounded, self-directed. You didn't lose her. You outgrew the role that kept you optional. And once you step into that identity, you don't need to protect your position anymore, because being a standard speaks for itself. If you think back to the beginning of this conversation, it probably started with a familiar feeling, the uncertainty, the waiting, the quiet frustration of giving more than you were getting, being kept close but never chosen, available but never prioritized. And now you can see the truth clearly. You were never lacking value. You were lacking leverage. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you enforce boundaries without emotion, the moment your focus returns to your goals instead of her reactions, the moment you choose growth over answers and silence over drama, you stop being an option. A man with direction doesn't beg to be chosen. A man with standards doesn't argue for respect. A man with discipline doesn't stay where he's tolerated instead of valued. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming grounded. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need permission. You don't need to be picked. When your life is built around purpose, structure, and self-respect, the dynamic shifts naturally. Some people won't follow you into that version of yourself. And that's not failure. That's alignment. You didn't lose her. You lost the version of yourself that accepted being optional. And that's the real win. If this message hit closer to home than you expected, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Like this video so it reaches the men who need to hear it. And leave a comment below. Something simple, something honest. Right. I choose self-respect. Because the moment you choose yourself, everything else rearranges around that decision. You're no longer waiting to be chosen. You're choosing who gets access to you. And that's where your power begins. She texts you just enough to keep you hooked, cancels plans with a sweet excuse, and still somehow makes you feel guilty for noticing. Sounds familiar? That's not bad luck. That's strategy. You've fallen into the quietest trap in modern dating, being the man she keeps on standby. But here's the twist. It's not her fault you're stuck there. It's yours, because you've been playing by rules that never favored you. If you've ever wondered why women chase one man but forget another, this is your wake-up call. In the next few minutes, I'll give you the 7 psychological steps that make a woman stop taking you for granted and start fighting for your attention. If you've ever been that man waiting for her text, wondering what changed, today is the day you stop waiting and start taking control. Before we move on, hit subscribe, like, and write one simple line in the comments. I'm done being an option. Say it out loud if you have to. That's your first step toward emotional reset. Because what comes next isn't theory. It's the start of your rebuild. And once you understand this first truth, everything about how you show up with women will start to shift. Number 1, read the room. If you've ever caught yourself waiting for her reply that never comes, replaying the same unanswered message on your phone, it's not bad luck. It's a pattern. You're being quietly downgraded. She's not saying it out loud, but every delay, every cancelled plan, every sorry, got busy is a silent signal. You're not the priority, you're the placeholder. When a woman's interest fades, she doesn't always leave. Sometimes she keeps you around just enough to feel wanted, without ever giving back the same energy. That's what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. It's when rewards are given inconsistently, just enough to keep you hooked, craving the next moment of affection. It's not love, it's emotional conditioning. The human brain reacts to uncertainty like a drug. Every time she disappears, then suddenly sends a "Hey stranger" text, dopamine spikes. You confuse that high with connection, when really it's dependency. You start chasing that rush, not her, but the illusion of what you thought she felt. And that's how good men stay stuck. Here's the truth most men don't want to face. She doesn't keep you around because she needs you. She keeps you around because she can. Because you haven't shown her that your absence costs something. You're available, predictable, and replaceable. The perfect emotional safety net. And let's be honest, you've probably told yourself she's just busy, or that she'll come around. That's not optimism. That's denial. Every time you excuse her behavior, you teach her it's acceptable. Every time you stay, you tell her you'll tolerate being plan B. Reading the room isn't about being bitter or playing hard to get. It's about clarity. It's the moment you stop negotiating your worth with someone who's already discounted it. So ask yourself, is she making space for you or just keeping you in storage? If she's treating you like a background character in her story, then it's time you stop auditioning for a lead role. Number 2, the law of reciprocity. In every connection, romantic, professional, or social, value only exists when energy flows both ways. The moment you start pouring more than you receive, the balance breaks and respect collapses. Most men don't realize it until it's too late. When you keep showing up for someone who doesn't reciprocate, you stop being desirable and start being convenient. Reciprocity isn't some poetic concept, it's behavioral economics. When she gives less and still gets your full attention, her brain registers one thing: your effort has no price. She learns that she doesn't need to try. She can give you crumbs and still get a feast of validation in return. That's not attraction. That's conditioning her to undervalue you. Think about the last time you texted first, apologized first, adjusted your schedule first, all while she gave the bare minimum. That's not generosity. That's self-neglect, dressed as kindness. Every time you reach out first, you're rewarding low effort. Every time you accept the imbalance, you're teaching her how little it takes to keep you around. If love is a currency, stop trading gold for her breadcrumbs. Your attention, time, and emotional energy are assets, not donations. The more you give them away without a return, the faster they lose their worth. Here's what psychology says. People mirror behavior that benefits them. When you stop over-investing, one of two things will happen. She'll either step up to match your energy, or she'll drift away because the free supply is gone. Either way, you win. You regain clarity. Pulling back isn't about punishment, it's about recalibration. You're not withdrawing love, you're re-establishing value. When your availability stops being guaranteed, she's forced to re-evaluate what your presence actually means. That's the shift. Remember this truth. Every time you reward low effort, you're reinforcing the behavior that made you feel small in the first place. Reciprocity isn't about ego. It's about emotional economy. When both sides invest fairly, respect compounds. When one side overpays, connection dies in debt. So from now on, don't beg for balance. Create it. Number 3, you come first. Here's something most men never realize until they've already lost themselves. The moment you start orbiting around her, you begin to fade from her sight. A man who builds his world around a woman eventually becomes invisible in it. You stop being magnetic and start being manageable. And once you're manageable, you're forgettable. Women aren't drawn to men who chase them. They're drawn to men who chase purpose. There's a psychological principle behind it: self-orbit attraction. When a man radiates direction, focus, and internal gravity, people naturally align around him. But when he gives up that center, when his emotional balance depends on her attention, the polarity collapses. You stop being a man she's intrigued by and start being one she controls. Think of it like this. She's not the sun and you're not a planet in her orbit. You are your own gravity. Every goal you chase, every boundary you set, every decision you make, those are the elements that create your field. And that field either pulls people in or repels those who don't belong there. You want her to notice you again. Don't text more. Don't prove harder. Build stronger. Invest in your health, your ambition, your mission. Not for her, but because those things remind you of who you are when you're not seeking approval. That energy, the quiet, unbothered certainty, is what creates attraction. It signals value without words. Women subconsciously read social proof. When they sense that your world is full, that you're fulfilled, respected, desired, they feel an instinctive pull. It's not manipulation. It's magnetism. The same way people gather around a fire, not because the fire asks them to, but because it burns on its own. So stop orbiting her. Reclaim your gravity. You were never meant to revolve around someone's moods or schedules. The moment you step back into your own axis, that's when she notices the space you've created and the silence that used to belong to her. Because here's the paradox of attraction. The second she realizes you're fulfilled without her, that's when she starts chasing your attention. Number 4, the novelty factor. Predictability kills desire, not instantly, but slowly, like oxygen leaving a room. When a woman already knows what you'll say, when you'll reply, and how you'll react, you stop being a person she's drawn to and start being a pattern she's memorized. And the human brain doesn't crave what it already understands. It craves surprise. Psychologists call it habituation. It means the more familiar a stimulus becomes, the weaker the emotional response. The same joke stops being funny. The same touch stops feeling electric. The same conversation stops being exciting. You're not boring. You've just become predictable. Here's the part most men don't get. She's not losing interest because you did something wrong. She's losing interest because she can see your next move before you make it. When every reply comes instantly, every invitation feels expected, and every action follows a script, there's no tension left to pull her in. You don't have to disappear or play games. What you need is pattern disruption. Create moments that make her pause. Moments where she can't quite read you. Take a few hours before replying. End a conversation on your own terms. Try something new, unexpected, and unannounced. Do it not to provoke her, but to remind yourself that your time and energy have rhythm, not permanence. A man who is easy to read is easy to forget, but a man who carries an element of mystery, not secrecy, but depth, activates a different part of her brain. Dopamine spikes when the outcome is uncertain. She starts checking your profile, rereading messages, replaying your tone in her head. You've stopped being a script and become a story again. Mystery isn't manipulation. It's magnetic tension. It's the subtle art of keeping her curious, keeping her invested. The more she wonders, the more she feels. And that curiosity fuels attraction far stronger than validation ever could. So never let her feel like she solved you. Be the man she's still trying to figure out, not the one she's already defined. Predictability makes her comfortable. Unpredictability makes her intrigued. And between comfort and curiosity, desire will always choose curiosity. Number 5. Be the prize. The more accessible something is, the less it's valued. That's not cynicism. That's psychology. Scarcity bias, a proven behavioral truth, states that people assign higher worth to what feels limited. So when your time, attention, and emotional energy are always available, they stop being meaningful. You become a constant, and constants are invisible. When a woman knows she can reach you anytime, she stops reaching with intention. When she knows you'll answer immediately, she stops crafting her words carefully. When she knows you'll always forgive, she stops fearing the loss. That's not confidence on her part. It's conditioning on yours. Being the prize doesn't mean acting superior. It means understanding that your value is determined by how selectively you share yourself. You don't need to announce it. You simply adjust your behavior. You reply when you actually have the time. You share less, not because you're hiding, but because you've learned the difference between intimacy and exposure. A treasure loses its value when it's left in the open. What's rare feels sacred. What's constant feels common. When you become emotionally scarce, when you stop broadcasting your availability. She begins to feel your absence, and the human brain reacts to absence with curiosity, even anxiety. That's loss aversion in motion. We feel the pain of losing something twice as strong as the pleasure of gaining it. So when she senses that your attention is no longer guaranteed, her instincts awaken. She replays your last conversation. She starts to wonder if someone else has your focus now. It's not about jealousy. It's about recalibration. She's realizing your presence had a weight, and she took it for granted. The less she knows about what's next, the more she'll want to find out. That's not playing games. That's allowing space for tension to breathe. You're not punishing her with silence. You're reminding her that your energy is earned, not entitled. When your time and attention become rare, her interest becomes real. Because attraction isn't built on abundance, it's built on anticipation. And when you finally give her your focus again, it won't feel casual. It'll feel like a reward. Number 6, draw the line. Respect doesn't come from what you tolerate. It comes from what you refuse to. Every relationship, whether romantic or not, is a negotiation of boundaries, the invisible lines that teach others how to treat you. When those lines blur, connection turns into convenience, and the person who refuses to set standards becomes the one everyone tests. Let's be clear. Boundaries aren't ultimatums. They're not threats, demands, or emotional walls. They're quiet declarations of self-worth. When you draw the line, you're not saying, "Don't cross me." You're saying, "This is the level of access my peace requires." It's not about control. It's about clarity. Take something simple. She cancels plans for the 3rd time. Most men respond emotionally. They argue, chase, or beg. But strength isn't in the reaction. It's in the restraint. Silence, distance, and consistency communicate far more than confrontation ever will. When your energy stops being reactive, your absence starts speaking louder than your words. Psychologists call it psychological reactance. When someone senses they're losing freedom, they instinctively desire what's slipping away. So when you withdraw calmly, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, she starts to feel that shift. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer waiting. You've drawn a line, and suddenly, she has to decide if she's willing to step back across it. A man without boundaries is like a door that never closes. Easy to enter, easier to leave. Every time you let someone cross your limits without consequence, you're not being kind. You're being complicit in your own neglect. Here's the truth most men never learn. Consistency builds credibility. When your boundaries stay firm, your presence starts to mean something again. People, including her, respect what they can't manipulate. So next time she pushes, don't explain your worth. Show it. Don't argue your standards. Enforce them quietly. The power isn't in telling her what you'll no longer accept. It's in showing her that you mean it. When she knows your standards, she'll rise to meet them or step aside. Either outcome protects your peace. And that's how boundaries stop being rules and start becoming respect. 7. Show her what she could lose. Every man wants to be wanted, but few understand the difference between being wanted and being needed. The first is temporary, based on attention, novelty, or charm. The second is deeper, built on the kind of value that can't be replicated once it's gone. Irreplaceability isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's about becoming the man whose absence echoes louder than his words ever did. So how do you reach that point? By becoming whole, not dependent, not performative, but anchored. Irreplaceable men share 3 traits: emotional depth, stability, and vision. They don't chase connection. They create gravity. They bring clarity to chaos, calm to intensity, and purpose to uncertainty. That's what makes a woman pause before she walks away, because deep down she knows she may find someone new. but she won't find this. When you offer emotional depth, you give her safety. When you embody stability, you become her peace. And when you have vision, when you're building something greater than the relationship itself, you become her inspiration. Those three things form the foundation of masculine energy that can't be duplicated. Every woman remembers the man who made her feel safe and slightly scared to lose him. Not because he threatened to leave, but because his presence carried weight. He didn't need to prove his worth. He lived it. His silence spoke louder than any declaration. His focus made her realize she was part of something rare. You don't win her by proving you're the best. You win her by being the one she can't forget. The one who touched her life with certainty, not need. When you operate from abundance, not scarcity, you stop competing with other men entirely. You exist in a category of your own. And here's the paradox of power. The moment she realizes losing you would mean losing her balance, that's when you've become the priority. Because true influence doesn't come from chasing attention. It comes from embodying value so solid that attention chases you. That's the man she doesn't play games with. That's the man she rethinks everything for. And that's the man you're becoming. You started this video wondering why she treats you like an option. Why you feel like the man she calls when she's bored, but forgets when she's busy. Now you know the truth. It was never just about her choices. It was about your boundaries, your energy, and what you taught her to expect. Because in every relationship, spoken or not, you're teaching people how to value you. Every unanswered message you accept, every cancelled plan you forgive without consequence, every time you overextend to prove your worth, you write the script of how you'll be treated. And the good news? You can rewrite it anytime. You don't need to chase, convince, or negotiate for attention. You only need to remember this. You teach people how to value you by the way you value yourself. When you start showing up like a man who knows his worth, you won't have to demand respect. It will arrive uninvited. Look back at where you began, the guy who waited for her texts, who accepted uncertainty as affection. That man doesn't exist anymore. You've learned to read the room, balance reciprocity, and reclaim your gravity. You've discovered that mystery isn't manipulation, it's magnetic. You've drawn lines that protect your peace and built presence that commands attention. Now, you're not the guy she calls when she's bored. You're the man she can't stop thinking about. The one whose silence says more than his words ever could. The one whose absence feels heavier than his presence ever did. And remember this, when you know your worth, silence becomes your weapon, distance becomes your language, and scarcity becomes your power. You're not being cold, you're being clear. If this message hit you hard, it's because you needed to hear it. Don't just listen to it. Live it. Walk with it. Let it reshape the way you show up in every connection you have. Subscribe to this channel because here we don't chase approval. We study psychology, master energy, and reclaim emotional power. I'll